Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits, stepping up to the plate, ready to knock out the 600th episode of the podcast with plenty of sports talk to get into over the next hour or so, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with Joe's JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard, and for those who've been banging with me, going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, or even as early as this past Monday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And before I begin, of course, I have to thank each and every one of you. 600 podcasts. So whether if this is your first day or to go all the way back to my day ones, thank you very much for your support, love, participation in any way, shape, form that you have done over the past 7.5 years, considering that just 3 days ago, September 1st, was the actual anniversary, if you want to call it that, 7.5 years of the podcast, as we steamrolled to March 1st and an 8th year of this endeavor. So I'd be remiss if I did not show any type of gratitude and thank you all for your support throughout the course of this almost 8-year journey. So with that being said, the second thing I want to get to before I even unpack what's going to take place here, because the NFL obviously raises the curtain on its schedule tonight and everybody's geeked up, everybody's just pumped up, ready to go. And guess what? Yours truly, even myself, I am as well. But before I even get into that, I do want to make a mention that the NFL preview, if you're wondering, wait a minute, JAYREELZ, usually on your website, on Apple, Spotify, and even YouTube, you would have your NFL preview. Well, I did do that yesterday. So you have to check the link in the description, or if you're not a subscriber to the channel, please do so. JAYREELZ is the channel on that platform. So if you could go ahead and subscribe there, you'll get my full 2 hours. And yes, I took questions and obviously comments from the people who jump in and out of the chat room throughout the course of that time span. And it's a great time. Every Wednesday, I have my regulars there, my 4 or 5 diehards. Shout out to Val B out in the Bay Area, to Bio Zio out in Southern California, north of the border to Brent Tolman. I know I got to say that correctly, Tolman, as well as Jai Shields in Baltimore, as well as my guy Cole in Michigan, and Mrs. Cole for that matter. And if I left anybody out, James D right here in Queens. The list goes on. So those are my regulars. If you want to hop on board every Wednesday for the live stream, please do so. But if you want to get a full comprehensive analysis, breakdown, predictions, you name it, you're definitely going to have to watch there, because what I'm going to discuss here with the NFL is the week 1 storylines, the matchups, etc. Now, I'm not going to go through every game because, as we all know, there's going to be some duds here. But similar to college football, you know, the opening weekend is going to be at least tonight, tomorrow, a couple of big games Sunday, then you have your Sunday night, Monday, and we'll go through it right now as far as that goes. Now, when we look at tonight, of course, another banner is going to be raised at Lincoln Financial Field, where the Eagles will now defend their championship. And it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to play it out. A lot of people think that this team could go back to another Super Bowl. And listen, this is a team that's stocked, that's ready to go, pumped up. I just found out a little while ago that the Eagles were even inquiring about Micah Parsons, but of course the Cowboys 86 that. Rightfully so. I know Jerry Jones is crazy, the circus, the carnival that the Cowboys are, but if he would have done that, forget about it. I think every Cowboy fan would have just jumped ship at that point. That would have been Luka Doncic 2.0 for sure. As it was, that did not come to pass, but tonight you're going to get, I think, a game where the Eagles are going to be flying. The Cowboys, I don't want to say that they're reeling from the aftermath of the trade to Green Bay for Micah Parsons, but how I look at it is that if the Cowboys are going to come out fast, furious, loose, play a game that it's, hey, we have house money, nobody's expecting us to win, and even though offensively they have the key components there to at least keep themselves in the game, but we would think that the Eagles would tush push, and we're going to have to get ourselves wrapped up in that all year long, that this could be a rather rocking chair type game for the defending champs. So that's how I look at it for tonight. I could see the Cowboys being in the game, but I don't know how much life they're going to have. This should be a us against the world type of deal, considering that they're going into hostile territory. We know that the Eagle fan does not like the Cowboys and their fans Who knows how many Cowboy fans will be in attendance tonight. But with that being said, I think the Eagles will have I don't want to say a cakewalk, but I think when it's all said and done, whatever the spread is, and I couldn't even tell you what it is right now. Well, let me see if I can look at that real quick. 8.5, and I'm not a betting man, but that looks like it's probably right around there. I could see the Eagles winning by 10, I don't know, 23-10, 23-13, maybe a backdoor cover by the Cowboys, who knows, but I could see the Eagles winning tonight rather, maybe not convincingly, but rather easily. Then you have the game in Sao Paulo, which, as you well know from my standpoint, the games overseas, or in this case down in Brazil, we could just rather get away with them or do away with them altogether. I'm not a proponent of these, as you well know. But for the Chiefs and that storyline there, who knows if they're going to get back to another Super Bowl. I think that won't go as far as saying the class of the AFC, but if you have that quarterback healthy and the coach, I understand he's been around the block several times, and even though in the Super Bowls there's been a question mark, especially last year when you look at how they just got ambushed by the Eagles. But the Chiefs, you have to wonder, is this the end for Travis Kelce? Is he looking at the finish line considering the proposal to his fiance on top of all of the circus that goes around the Chiefs? Not necessarily to the level of the Cowboys, but we all know that by the time we get to midseason, whether they get off to a fast start and leave the AFC West in the dust, or if they get off to a slow start, you're going to get Chief fatigue probably by midseason, and it's going to get to a point where it's like, oh, can we just put this team out to pasture or put them to rest or whatever it may be? But you know they're going to be a storyline because they're always going to be a part of the news cycle, whether it's the NFL or just sports in general. And then the Chargers, what are they going to do? They had a playoff season last year under their first-year head coach, Jim Harbaugh, but we understand that they put up a dud against the Texans, and now they have to redeem themselves to see whether or not that they belong not only in the battle for the AFC West, but even just the conference on a whole, because we all know the AFC is stacked. So that game tomorrow night, now it's on YouTube. I thought it was on Peacock. So I don't know if that's a subscription deal or is that going to be free on YouTube? Who knows? But you know, every weekend you're going to have to figure out where these games are being played, or so it seems. We know 1 o'clock CBS and Fox for the AFC, NFC packages, and I know they flip-flop every now and again where you'll see an AFC team that's on the road be on Fox and vice versa. But here's what we got. The oversaturation of the sport with all these mouths to feed, so you know that we're just getting started when it comes to this, and you're going to really have to keep your head on a swivel to see where these games are going to be played. Now, as far as the matchups on Sunday, here are the ones that to me stick out. The first one that comes to mind, and obviously I got to say this as a Steeler fan, you're going to have the opposing team's quarterbacks who played for the previous teams a year ago, but more so Rodgers coming back to the Meadowlands to go up against his former team. Now, we understand that the 2-year tenure, really 1 year, because 4 plays into his first year, he blew out his Achilles, and then last year, where there was a lot of hoopla, but that certainly just flatlined for a team that obviously didn't do much last year. So for Aaron Rodgers to come back, I don't know what type of reception he's going to get. I'm sure it's not going to be overwhelmingly filled with boos, but I'm sure there's going to be a smattering, and I'm sure as the game progresses, depending on how either well he does or how bad he does, he's either going to get cheered or jeered. So for Rodgers, we know that this is probably a swan song for him. This is his last call, and how he's going to perform this year, especially in front of an offensive line that was built through the draft. And what they're going to do this year is going to be heavily predicated on keeping Rodgers upright and having an opportunity for them to do anything in the AFC, and even more so if they do qualify to finally win a playoff game for the first time since 2016, or at least that season. And even more so for the Steeler fan like myself, I understand there are no moral victories by winning a playoff game, but you know what? Hey, let's get one first and then maybe get to a divisional round and see what happens. As far as the division goes, that's going to be tough sledding because of Baltimore and maybe even Cincinnati to a lesser degree. But for the Steelers, this is a big season for them. They've gone all in with their acquisitions this offseason. You already know who they are, the DK Metcalfs, the Jalen Ramseys, the Darius Slays, the Jonnu Smiths, of course Aaron Rodgers. So they know that in order for them to compete, they had to go big or go home. So let's see if that's going to work or if this experiment is going to bottom out here, and it all starts at the Meadowlands. And then for the Jets, Aaron Glenn, the former player who was drafted by that team back in the 90s and now comes home to coach this team and with Justin Fields, who was formerly in Pittsburgh a year ago, and let's see what he's going to do. There's been a lot of whispers about how the offense maybe as much as it's going to be run-oriented, but who knows what they're going to get out of the passing game, considering that they're simplifying it for him to not make mistakes, to be that game manager. But you know they're going to have to take chances because this is a passing league. You can't win every week 13-10, 16-13, which is going to be the blueprint for this Jet team. And even though their defense is very good and has been ranked near the top or close, at least in the top third of the league, but still, you can't rely on them to bail you out. The offense is going to have to do something. And Fields does have ability. He does have talent. He does have a good arm. It's not really accurate, hence the short passing game and not really taking those big chances. But if you're a Jet fan, you're going to want to see that because it's not a situation where you want to see him running the ball 10, 12 times a game. Yes, he may take off the clock or he may move the chains, or I should say the clock would go down, especially in the fourth quarter when they're trying to protect the lead, or to try to set themselves in field goal range. But with the Jets, it looks like it's going to be a long season, and who knows how Fields is going to play. That's something that we're going to have to monitor as we move it along. Then you're looking at the big game, 4 o'clock with Detroit and Green Bay. Detroit, we all know the last 2 years, this close 2 years ago, last year the big year, but certainly flopped in that divisional game against the Commanders and how they rebound and bounce back from that. A lot of people think they're going to take a step back, and although they do have a very hard schedule, but with the division, even with Green Bay and with Micah Parsons and the spotlight being on him and that team this year, of course, the trade just happening a week ago today, you would think that those teams are going to be neck and neck, similar to last year with Detroit and Minnesota as far as the NFC North goes. But the Lions, I think, are still the class of the conference, even with the Eagles there, because remember, the Lions were a game ahead of the Eagles last year, and if it wasn't for that loss against the Commanders, chances are Philly would have gone to Detroit, and as it turned out, Philly would have played in Detroit if they would have won that game, and we would have seen that epic clash, but obviously that did not come to pass. So for Detroit, everything's in front of them this year. I know the offensive coordinator is no longer there, Ben Johnson in Chicago and the aforementioned Aaron Glenn with the Jets. But for both of those teams with big aspirations to get to a Super Bowl for the first time in their franchise's history, as far as the Lions go, and with the Packers making this trade for Micah Parsons, I'm sure you've heard in the last couple of podcasts how I felt about that deal. But Parsons, even with this back injury that he has coming into this game, and of course he's going to play, obviously he's getting paid $47 million not to sit out, especially in the opening game against a division rival. But you would have to think that the Packers will be in the mix. Now, could Jordan Love get himself over the hump by beating the big teams? We saw last year he was unable to beat Detroit twice. He was unable to beat Philly twice, including the playoff game. And the Vikings, who had a big season, couldn't beat them. So that's a big storyline, I think, with those two teams matching up and going into the season. Then you have the Sunday night game with Baltimore and Buffalo. We know that the last time these two teams played was in that divisional round. Lamar Jackson bringing his team back, although had the mishaps in the first half of the game, sailing a pass over his receiver's head to get picked off that led to a field goal. His fumble near midfield that took back the other way, which set up the Bills at 1st and goal, punching it into the end zone. But he did rally the troops, get himself in the end zone to make it 27-25, and then Mark Andrews drops the 2-point conversion where the Ravens go home yet again in another disappointing finish. And with Buffalo, as I mentioned in mine, I'll give you a little teaser here, my NFL preview, one of the big storylines coming into the season, can Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson get over the hump? Meaning that can they beat Kansas City and can they get to a Super Bowl? And now you have these two going at it, the two MVPs in back-to-back years. 2 years ago, Jackson, last year, Allen. How they get off to a good start is going to be important because this game is going to mean enormously as far as tiebreakers go down the road until the end of the year. So if the Bills, who are going to play their last season in that building, formerly known as Rich Stadium and New Era Field, and I don't even know what it's called now, Ralph Wilson Stadium, I believe. This is their last year in that building. So you know they're going to want to go out with a big hurrah before moving into the new building right across the street. And of course, it's probably going to be with all the bells and whistles and not have the feel of an old ballpark. And I get it, it's 2025. You got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to have the fan experiences and the food elevated and corridors big and giant bathrooms. I understand that. And luxury boxes, of course, because that's what's going to really rake in the dough when it comes to the organization is concerned. But when you have these two teams go at it, especially this early in the season, and knowing that they also have big aspirations to get to the big dance, this is obviously a big game to target. And Baltimore, they're stacked, they're loaded. They really have no excuse not to get to a Super Bowl with the way their personnel has been constructed. I have a big question mark about the head coach. 2 years ago in that championship game, while his team was imploding, he did nothing. He didn't do anything to calm his team down, where you had tons of unsportsmanlike penalties and personal fouls, and then Lamar Jackson throwing his helmet after interceptions, and Zay Flowers fumbling the ball and not getting his team on the same page. And I understand that was 2 years ago, and last year the game up in Orchard Park, all right, you're going to look at Mark Andrews, and he also had a fumble there too on top of that. But to me, despite him winning a Super Bowl many moons ago, it's what have you done for me lately? Similar to Mike Tomlin too, so I got to raise my hand high in the air as a Steeler fan. So it's a situation where the Ravens, right now, a lot of people are picking them to go to Super Bowl, but I don't know. Are you going to look at this team when the chips are on the line and the money's on the table for Lamar Jackson to deliver? Well, now's his time. He hasn't done it the last couple of years, and I guess the third time's a charm, considering he was a 1 seed 2 years ago and lost at home, and then last year in that game up in Buffalo. And then for the Bills, Josh Allen, he has to beat Kansas City. They're going to face them in the regular season, and what? They're going to beat them again, and then in the postseason meetup and have another heartbreaker? Listen, if I can look into my crystal ball, chances are that could be the same movie that we've seen here year after year after year. But for Buffalo, we know this is a big year for them, and for Josh Allen getting his MVP and what he's going to do for an encore, that's another big storyline heading into this season, where you have those two teams that are going to battle it out in the AFC. And as far as that goes, other just matchups and things of that nature, not really a lot when it comes to sexiness. Cincinnati at Cleveland, the Battle of Ohio. We know Cleveland's going to have a long year. I know the Shedeur Sanders watch could be in effect in the next month or so. The Bengals, their offense, high octane, but can Trey Hendrickson, who's now back in uniform, can he even elevate his game higher to at least be a semblance of a defense? Because as we all know, the strength is in their offense, and their defense certainly has a lot to be desired. Then you have the Vegas and New England. A lot of people think New England, 8.5 is their number in Vegas. I don't know. I need to see a little bit more. But for Vegas, with Pete Carroll in the desert and with Geno Smith bringing him back from Seattle when they were the quarterback coach tandem there up in the Pacific Northwest, with a change of culture, can the Raiders be a surprise this year? Not only in the AFC, but just in the NFL overall. Then what does Washington do for an encore, considering Jaden Daniels in his rookie year being able to take his team to a championship game and beat the Lions in the process? Could it be a sophomore jinx? Could it be a letdown as a team that was the Hunty last year and now they're the Hunted? That remains to be seen, and they're going to play that Giant team that could be on the come-up. Big year for both Brian Daboll and their front office with Joe Shane at the helm. So with Russell Wilson and maybe Jackson Dart not too far ahead, could this be a time where the Giants, although a very tough schedule to start, but could the Jackson Dart era begin maybe a lot sooner than we think, or maybe somewhere down the road if the Giants stay in contention there in the NFC? And then you have Denver, a team that a lot of people think and expect big things out of them. Second-year quarterback Bo Nix with Sean Payton and a very good defense. Then you have the Niners playing Seattle. A lot of people think Seattle could be a sleeper, but how could they be a sleeper when they were 10-7 last year and missed the playoffs by that much? And in San Francisco, with Brock Purdy getting the bag, and how the Niners have to rebound from what happened the year before, getting this close to winning a Super Bowl but falling short. So that's another team we're going to look at. The Rams, the back of Matthew Stafford. I know, a big question mark if you're a Ram fan, but you have to wait and see whether or not he's going to be upright for 17 games. If he's not, it looked like it could be a long season for the Rams. And then they're going to play the Texans, who go out to LA. And can the Texans get past the divisional round, because they plateau every time they qualify for the postseason? Yeah, they may win their wild card game at home as a 4 seed, but then the next week they get bounced out in the divisional round. Can they go past that with the QB coach tandem of CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans? And then your Monday night game is the era of Ben Johnson, where you'll have Caleb Williams, second-year quarterback, Chicago Bears at home against the Vikings, with J.J. McCarthy, the former Michigan quarterback who won a national title, as you know, and how Kevin O'Connell, the QB guru that he is, how he's able over the last 2 years, because even though McCarthy didn't play yet last year with that shoulder injury, but I'm sure he's learned a lot under O'Connell, but now he's going to get some big-time reps, and he's going to get the play coming at him fast and furious there Monday night, 8:15. Not a great game, but you would think division rivals, and a lot of people want to see how the Bears are going to do and how Caleb Williams' second year and even J.J. McCarthy, at least that's a highlight game for those two teams and those two quarterbacks to see how they perform. But besides that, that is your NFL Week 1. And I'm fascinated to see how it's all going to unfold and how it's going to play out. And I'll give you another little teaser here. My knockout pool pick for the week, I picked Denver. Just so, if you're curious to know, over-unders, you're going to have to listen to the podcast. And my Super Bowl pick, all I'll say is if you've been listening to me going back more than a year, my Super Bowl pick is similar to the one last year, but with a different result. Because the team that I picked to win last year, I did not pick to win this year. So if you listened back then, and if you've listened even leading up to, whether it's the live streams or the podcast, of course, you'll have a good idea as to who I picked as far as the Super Bowl participants. And then if you really do the math, who I picked to win this year. And if you haven't, you're going to have to go back to listen, my good people, to the preview yesterday that was on the live stream for your edification. So that's what I have with the NFL. Let me see other news and notes to discuss. I know the Jets may be without Elijah Vera-Tucker, big offensive lineman. I believe he has an arm injury or shoulder, something going on where that would be a big loss. As you know, the Jets just trying to find themselves with their culture, and with him going into the last year of his contract, who knows what that's going to mean long term, but that's going to be a loss there for the Jets, especially this opening week where you're going to have TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, and a Steeler defense trying to get at Justin Fields and that Jet offense. All right, I'm going to get to the college football after the baseball segment because I want to talk baseball real quick because now we have an interesting development that's taken place and actually a rather surprising one. If you've listened to me over the last few weeks, I thought this was going to be a sleepy September, and it could still turn out to be that way when it comes to these races, whether it be the division races and the NL West, AL West, and even the AL East, which has a big series this weekend, and actually a big game for the Yankees today, and I'm going to get to the Yankees in a little bit. But when it comes to the American League wild card, all of a sudden, I don't want to say it's been flipped upside down, but certainly now there's some teams that are hovering and may be able to attack the Seattle Mariners for the last playoff spot in the American League. And let me explain. The Mariners have now been in a bit of a tailspin here. They got swept by the Rays in Tampa, and now they've had the Rangers, the Royals, who have still been hanging around, but now you have a situation where the Tampa Bay Rays, after that 3-game sweep, which was enormous, because if they were going to try to get themselves back into this playoff mix or this wild card mix, they had to sweep the Mariners. Sure enough, they did. And with them doing so, they are now 2.5 games back and 2 on the loss from the Mariners. The same record as the Kansas City Royals, who, as we know, they were the one team that looked like they were going to be the only threat to the Mariners in this race. But now you also have to throw in the Texas Rangers, who stubbed their toe here over the last couple of days against the Arizona Diamondbacks. So for those teams, Rangers, Royals, Rays, all separated by a game in the standings because the Rangers are just 1 game back, or 1.5, but they're also 2 in the loss. They're 72-69. The Royals are 70-69, same for the Rays. And for those teams, and you want to throw in the Guardians too, I know they're at 500, but they do have 3 games in hand of the Rangers when you think about it. They're 69-69 and have a game in hand against the Royals and Rays. So for Cleveland, I'll throw them in there as well. Tampa, Kansas City, Texas, all of them with Seattle. Now you may have a chance, and we'll see come Monday once the weekend and how that all unfolds and to see if they get even any closer. But now you may have 4 teams, now maybe 5 teams for 1 spot. Is it a little premature? Maybe. But now they have to be a part of the discussion because of the proximity of the way these teams are, with Seattle now going into a tailspin, and with the Rangers not playing well. They could have actually maybe even overtaken Seattle if they would have won those 2 games, but they didn't. And now with Tampa on fire and with the Guardians still hanging around, playing a bit better here over the last couple of weeks after they looked like they were going to be out to sea as far as their being a part of the race is concerned, and the Royals, who have still been there in the mix. It's going to be fascinating. I'm going to go through the schedule in a second to see how this is all going to shape up this weekend, matchups, etc. And maybe if it's a situation where it really gets hotly contested. I'll take a look at the schedules for the last few weeks of those teams that are involved because, let's face it, it looked like it was going to be that sleepy September, as I mentioned there on Monday's podcast. And right now, you got a little bit of intrigue, and which is good because the sport needs it, because you cannot have a September out in the wilderness just waiting for October, and then all of a sudden, bam, the MLB playoffs begin. So I like that the teams have now started to keep up with Seattle, although Seattle not playing well. But let's see if they could continue to have gas in the tank to make this even more interesting over the last now 3+ weeks of this regular season. National League is pretty much still what it is. Do I even need to get into that? We talked about the Padres who've hit the skids here. They got swept by the Orioles at home. And even though they're still within arm's length of the Dodgers, but we would think the Dodgers should be home free as far as winning a division. And we know Phillies-Mets, that's over, even though the Mets and Phillies will play 4 times starting next week in Philadelphia. But now with the wild card, it looks like the Reds, although the Giants have played well, and I get it, you had that brouhaha, that dust-up with Rafael Devers, just circle the bases. Why even entertaining Kyle Freeland and trying to pimp a home run? I mean, please, really? Is that what we're doing here? Rafi, but the Giants have played well, and I got to give it up as they try to see if they can maneuver here. They're now 4 games behind the Mets there for that final spot. Now, the reason why I bring up the Reds is because the Mets go to Cincinnati over the weekend, and even if the Reds, and they have to sweep here, there's no way, if they take 2 out of 3, that's nothing. Wow, they gained 1 game. They need to sweep in the worst way. So for the Mets, all you got to do is just win the 1 game. You'd rather take 2 so you can really put the Reds out the pasture. But now the Giants, is this a situation where the Mets got to be concerned about them? Now the Giants, I believe, they still have to play the Dodgers. They may be done with the Padres. They may have a tricky schedule, but let's see where the dust settles on Monday after the Red Series and what the Giants are going to do. And of course, I'll take a peek at the schedule momentarily. But the Mets, who did win 2 games in Detroit, fantastic. And that's good. They got to win series here. Yes, it would be nice for them to go on a winning streak and kind of leave the wild card opposition in the dust. Because right now, they're going to go at it with the Padres for that 5th spot. There was just 1 game behind San Diego, considering that they've hit the skids here, especially that series against the Orioles. But now it's a situation where they have the Reds in front of them. Don't even think about the Giants. Just take care of the Reds, and let's see where we're at come Monday, because they're going to go to Philadelphia. That's going to be a big series because they're going to have to win, I would think, at least 2 games, because not knowing the opposition of what the Giants, I'll just say the Giants for now since they're closer to the Mets in the standings. But as I look at it, it's a situation where the National League is pretty much kaput. And yes, I know we got the NL West as far as that race goes, but the wild card, I need to see, once we get to Monday, where we lie as far as the NL races are concerned with those teams. And can we say to Carlos Mendoza, the manager, if I could just add this other quick note here, Ryan Helsley is now the Devin Williams of the Mets. And I'm going to get to Devin Williams in a second. I don't want to see him anywhere near a close game. And even though yesterday, all right, Mets, a 3-run homer, which iced the game, and that doesn't sit well with you, but Helsley is a gas can. I don't want to see him in big spots anymore. They can't put him there. The guy, he may throw 100, and he could throw a baseball through a brick wall, but it is straight. No movement. I understand he has the off-speed stuff, but it does not complement his fastball, because his fastball, I could probably hit it right now. That's how bad he's been. And you can even go back to the trade deadline, July 31st, when I did my live stream, how I looked at that as an unmitigated disaster if he does not do well here. And he has been everything and that in a Met uniform. So I just had to throw that in the mix. So let me get to the Yankees before I get to the schedule. Yankees-Astros, playoff atmosphere, crazy couple of games. And this game today for the Yankees is enormous. And the reason why I say that is because guess who's coming to town starting tomorrow? The Blue Jays. And they're currently 3.5 back, which means if they lose the rubber match in Houston today, they will be 4 back, which means that Toronto, there'll be no pressure on them. Now, if they win 1 game, they'll be fine, but there'll be no pressure, meaning that if the Yankees win today, they'll be 3 back. And obviously, if you do the math, if the Yankees sweep, they'll be in a flat-footed tie with the Blue Jays for first place in the AL East, which obviously the Yankees owe the Blue Jays, because the last 2 times they faced them, they've only lost 6 out of 7. Remember, right before the 4th of July, the Blue Jays swept those 4 games, which overtook the Yankees for first place. Because if you recall, the Blue Jays were 3 back starting that Monday, and then when they left Thursday out of the Rogers Center, the Yankees, they were one game behind the Blue Jays for first place. And obviously, the Blue Jays have not looked back. So for the Yankees, this is a must-win today because they would want to be 3 back to see if they could run the table this weekend to tie them at the top of the AL East instead of being 4 back, where if they do sweep, all right, they get closer, but they'll still be a game behind. And if the Blue Jays take 1 game, the Yankees will gain a game in the standings. And if by any chance, if the Blue Jays take 2 games, you can pretty much put the AL East to bed, pretty much. So that's what you have there with the Yankees and Blue Jays, and I'll get to the schedule after. What was just been so far a wild series. When you look at game 1, where Framber Valdez down 2-0, and the catcher Salazar waved off Framber Valdez to get off of the pitching rubber, and as it was, he didn't do so, so that ensuing pitch to Trent Grisham went over the Crawford boxes in left field from a 2-0 game to a 6-0 game, and then the next batter, after a 1-0 count, he throws a fastball down the middle, which the catcher called for a changeup, and it hit him right in the chest protector. And I don't want to hear apologies. I don't want to hear it was a cross-up. I don't want to hear this, that, and the third. Oh, we're fine, everything. Nonsense. All you got to do is look at the body language of Framber Valdez after he threw that pitch. He just turned around and looked to center field, and that was it. There was no concern on his face. There was no concern like, oh, my God, I'm sorry. None of that. And, yeah, they could have squashed it in the clubhouse, and everything could be all fine and dandy between the catcher and pitcher, but I'm not buying. And based on some of the reports that I've heard, because they could say it was a cross-up with the pitch com, remember, it's not just between pitcher and catcher. You also have a scenario where the shortstop, second baseman, and third baseman also have the pitch com. And based on reports, Jeremy Pena, Carlos Correa, there seemed to be a mix-up there, but Pena admitted, he said, no, that was a change-up there. So I don't want to say that he sold out Valdez there, but come on. It was evident that Valdez was not crossed up. That pitch was intentional. And you can even see, after the pitch was thrown and it hit the chest protector of the catcher just stood there like, what the hell just happened? And Valdez was just looking out into space in center field. So I don't want to hear that, oh, that was an apology, whatever. That was hollow. And I know the agent came out and said, what are you, crazy? That's misinformation. There's no way he would have done that. I'm not buying. The body language on Valdez just said it all. And to me, that was intentional. And then as far as last night's game, if you're a Yankee fan, just like I am with Ryan Helsley, you do not want to see Devin Williams in a close game. Here it was, the Yankees were up 3-0 in the game, and the Astros came back. They tied the game at 4 going to the bottom of the 8th. And what happens? I know he got squeezed on a couple of pitches there, and it makes you scratch your head. But that's the thing. Devin Williams' psyche is shot right now. So even if he gets squeezed, and if the umpire has it out for Williams, which I'm not going to say that's the case, but that's when the inning imploded. Jeremy Pena gets the big hit. Next thing you know, they score 4 runs. I know they made it closer there with the Bellinger home run there in the top of the 9th inning, but they fell 1 run short, and now you have a situation where Yankees-Astros, always exciting, always a playoff-like atmosphere. We're going to see how today plays out between those 2 teams before the Yankees come home to play the Blue Jays. And now as we take a look at the schedule before we move on to other things, today you have Carlos Rodon going up against Christian Javier, who has had success against the Yankees in the past. So Rodon pitches in another big game for this Yankee team to see whether or not that he could get out of Houston with a victory, or at least pitch well enough to keep them in the game for the Yankees to win. So that is a big-time game there tonight. The Dodgers try to avoid a sweep in Pittsburgh. That's right, a sweep where Paul Skeens will go up against Blake Snell. So that'll be an interesting matchup to see whether or not the Dodgers could avert a sweep at the hand of the Buccos. And then you have Philly-Milwaukee, a rubber matchup there this afternoon, where they had a weird scheduling quirk where they played Monday, were off Tuesday. They played yesterday where the Brewers won, and then they closed out their series today in Milwaukee there with the rubber match. And then you have Cleveland and Tampa Bay. I think that's the first of 4. Yes, it is. And that is a big series because one of those 2 teams could go home depending on who wins 3 out of 4. If they split, no harm, no foul. But that is an enormous series, low-key, to see if one of those 2 teams could inch closer in the wild card. So we'll have to keep that in mind. 4-game series there. LA, the Anaheim Angels, they'll go to Kansas City to wrap up this series today, and then we'll see who Kansas City plays over the weekend. Other than that, those are your big matchups today. When we head into the weekend, here's what you got. And these are the teams that really, or the games, the matchups that really matter. We know about Toronto, New York, Seattle at Atlanta, Cleveland at Tampa, as you know, Minnesota at Kansas City, Houston at Texas, big series. Texas obviously needs to win these games, and Texas is how many back? as of right now. Texas, is 5.5 back, 6 in a loss. So you can forget about it, the division. But that's still a big series, no matter how you slice it. San Francisco at St. Louis, obviously big there. San Diego at Colorado, they should fatten up on the Rockies. Athletics at the Anaheim Angels, Boston at Arizona. Those are the main series to really get into. Dodgers are in Baltimore, just because of San Diego. And that's what you have. That is your baseball in a nutshell. So you got some intrigue there. And a big loss for the Red Sox, speaking of which. Roman Anthony is going to miss the remainder of the year with an oblique. Originally 4 to 6 weeks, but they feel that if he's not going to be healthy, and we think the Red Sox will make the playoffs, and if you look at the calendar, 4 weeks from now, the first round will be about over. The wild card that is. And even if the Red Sox do advance, will Anthony be available to play? I think if they make it to a World Series, it's quite possible that he could be cleared to return. But the rookie who had put up some nice numbers here when he was brought up, I guess the early part of July, and signed that big 8-year, $103 million deal. Or 130, I think it was. Obviously, you're not going to see him, so that's a big loss. Let's see how the Red Sox fare here down the stretch as they try to keep themselves in good position for the wild card, so I had to bring that up as well. All right, now let me turn my attention to college football as I put back on the helmet and shoulder pads. And what we have here as far as week 2 in the schedule, or on the schedule, I should say, you pretty much have an encore that is just a flat-out dud. Because week 1, they're going to try to get everybody reeled in on a holiday weekend to have those high-profile matchups as we saw there this past weekend. And week 2 is certainly a valley compared to the peak that we saw just a few days ago. And the only game of note this weekend to even watch would be at 7:30 ABC, where Michigan will go to Oklahoma to play the Sooners. Besides that, you got nothing. You got a lot of homecoming-type games where teams are just going to get blasted. You're going to see a lot of 55 threes and 58 nothings and maybe a 70-3 score. So I'm not even going to unpack or even get into anything that's close to a semblance of a decent matchup, because you don't have any. And if I even went through it, you're going to be JAYREELZ, why'd you waste your breath? So I'm not going to waste your time any further. That is the one game that we'll look at. But you did have Ohio State after beating Texas. Now they are number 1 in the nation, followed by Penn State, LSU, Georgia, Miami. That's your top 5. And of course, Miami moving up after beating Notre Dame. Then you have Oregon, Texas, who goes from 1 all the way to 7. Clemson, Notre Dame goes to 9. South Carolina rounds out your top 10, where you have Illinois, Arizona State, Florida, Florida State, Michigan. That is your top 15. And of course, with the top 12, I understand it's way too early to even start to unpack this. But nevertheless, that is what your top 15 looks like. And I know, should I even bring up what happened there Monday night between TCU and North Carolina? Now, could I pound Bill Belichick today? I know it's 3 days later. I'm not going to do that. Listen, it's the start that he couldn't ever imagine, considering the way they started the game as they marched down the field to open up the scoring to have a 7-0 lead. And from that point on, the Horned Frogs scored 41 unanswered points en route to a 48-14 win over the Tar Heels. And all I'll say is this. It should get better. They play Charlotte this week, which I couldn't even tell you their colors, let alone their mascot or their team name. So you would think that should be a layup, but would you be surprised if they either win a close game or even, dare I say, lose a close game? Carolina doesn't have the players. That's what it boils down to, people. And even though with Belichick there, and I'm sure a lot of these players that were looking to try to get whether NIL deals or try to maybe get to Chapel Hill to be a part of a team with the Hall of Fame coach, or soon to be Hall of Fame, as you know, he's going to go in roller skates. But it's only one game. Certainly a terrible optic, and one that you just have to flush in the toilet and down the toilet. But what more can you say about that game? Now, let's see how he's going to fare moving forward when he's going up against, let's say, the likes of Charlotte, because if they lose this game, then everybody's going to get on him, and rightfully so, because whether they win by 1 point or 100, they have to win the game. And I won't come on here and pound them if they win by 1. Now, if they were trailing 19-0 and they win 20-19, maybe I could say a thing or two, but they win the game. So for people or for myself to get on Belichick 3 days after that loss, what is that going to do? Nothing much. So I'm just going to leave that where it is. And that is going to be your college football here for this coming week. And whatever it is, if that Michigan-Oklahoma game turns out to be a barn burner, I'll discuss it. Or even if it's a blowout, I'll bring it up. But other than that, there is very slim pickings when it comes to college football. All right, so now let me break out the tennis shoes and the racket to go over what's going on at the U.S. Open. And I know I probably should have mentioned this Monday. I was pumped up for Naomi Osaka going up against Coco Gauff. And if that was one where it was a complete surprise, sadly, that has been the tempo, for lack of a better word. That has been the story of the tournament in this regard. You haven't had a thrilling match. You haven't had any real drama or suspense that you could wrap your arms around. And when we looked at what took place Monday, where Gauff lost in straight sets and Osaka now has the magic carpet ride on her side. She's now made it to a semifinal for the first time in forever. And is she going to be able to get herself to a final and really upset the apple cart and win the whole thing? Now, we could get to the men's side in a second, which I certainly will do so. But right now, if there's going to be any juice, especially now as you're getting to a semifinal day today in the U.S. Open, where you have Naomi Osaka, who is ranked 23rd in the world, and for her to now be really an underdog of underdogs. I mean, who would have thought that she would be at this point knowing of the mental health issues that have stunted her trajectory here throughout her career, or at least throughout the last few years. Then having a baby over the last couple of years where she had to take time off. And now as she's trying to get her bearings to come back to be competitive, and we've seen her play, whether it's losing first rounds in tournaments or trying to get her sea legs to be, show some length to be a part and go deep into these tournaments. Well, now here she is. And she's going to go up against Amanda Anisimova, who laid the smackdown on Iga Świątek. Some payback after Wimbledon getting the double bagel where she didn't even win one game at the All England Club. And all she did was get a revenge. Now, mind you, that was a final where Anisimova got smoked. But here in the semifinal, I'm sure there had to be poetic justice to do Świątek the way she did in straight sets back in the early part of July, or middle July. So you have Osaka and Anisimova here on this stage again for Anisimova, back-to-back Grand Slams where she's made it to at least a semifinal. And then in the other bracket, you have Jessica Pegula going up against Aryna Sabalenka, which in its own right, Sabalenka, the number one player in the world, who had won her match based on Marketa Vondrousova having to retire because of a knee injury. And then Pegula beating Barbara Krejcikova, who beat Taylor Townsend over the weekend and beat her in straight sets. And even though Osaka beat Karolina Muchova, now that was also in straight sets. You did have a tie break, but there was no juice because Osaka was already up a set in that second set to where she won that tie break and was able to advance to face Anisimova, who, as I mentioned, disposed of Świątek. So where has been the drama? And this has been throughout the first week and a half here of this U.S. Open. So the only thing I could hope for as a tennis fan as we head into today with the semifinals of the women's side, and then tomorrow with the men's side, which again, you have had not a lot to really hang your hat on. I understand Djokovic making it this far is a story, and that you could certainly understand. 38 years of age. Let's see if he could outlast Alcaraz, who has not lost a set here in this tournament. Now, Sinner, who did lose a set there the other day, and he even said, I'm not a machine, but was able to take care of Lorenzo Mazzetti there last night, his former countryman, in straight sets. So now you have a situation where Sinner, who has a red carpet, and I understand Felix Auger Alassane, and I know I'm probably Alassane, I'm saying that, butchering his name, my apologies to, I'll say FAA, how about that? He's going to take care of him in straight sets. I'd be shocked if FAA even wins one set there tomorrow, and he's the late match because the early match is Alcaraz and Djokovic, and Djokovic has actually beaten Alcaraz the last 2 times they faced one another. So for Djokovic, who is trying to get to that 25th Grand Slam title, which would be the most overall because Margaret Court has 24, which I believe Serena may be at 23 or may have tied her. I'd have to go back and look at that. But this is going to be a gargantuan effort, not only for Djokovic to beat Alcaraz, but then also to beat Sinner, who's at the top of his game right now, coming off of a Wimbledon victory over Alcaraz, and now he's only lost 1 set here throughout this tournament. And to me, this would be tantamount to Tiger Woods winning the Masters in 2019 at the age of 42, where a lot of people thought his last major was the U.S. Open in 2008 when he beat Rocco Mediate. And of course, that came out of nowhere for him to win the green jacket there that final Sunday, that final round there in 2019. This, to me, I think would be equal. But it would even be more historic because he would hold the all-time record for most Grand Slam championships by men, women, doesn't matter. And if he does win this, which there's a part of me, I would like to see him do it. Now, I want to see Alcaraz win, and he's the guy that I picked from the start. But if he does beat Alcaraz, I will root like hell for Djokovic to beat Sinner. I'm not a Sinner guy. I don't know, there's something about his body language, whatever. And I respect him as a player. I mean, the guy he's ranked number 1 in the world for a reason. But either way, Alcaraz, Djokovic, that is going to be a tough match. And here's the other thing, too. If Djokovic were to win, granted he's playing the early match, if he were to win a 5-set thriller, 4.5-hour match, how's that going to bode well for him at his age, his body, and he recovers fast, he eats impeccably, etc., and I'm sure he has the best trainers on the planet. How will he be able to muster up any energy? And he's had these knee issues here you got to think about, although he's been valiant and he's not used that as a crutch. But how is he going to go up against a guy ranked number 1 who's, 24 years of age, and he's going to dispose of FAA in 3 sets? Is he going to have enough in the tank to beat Sinner on Sunday? And that match, by the way, is at 2 o'clock, not 4:15, usually, which would be the 4 o'clock window of the NFL games. But why they're playing this at 2 o'clock is beyond me. So you're playing this right in the middle of all the 1 o'clock games. So you really want nobody to watch this tournament, although I'm sure there's a lot of people overseas that will watch. I get it. But that's just a flat-out travesty for tennis, that even if you have Djokovic against Sinner or Alcaraz against Sinner, which would be maybe not a ratings bonanza on any other day because it is tennis, it's a niche sport, but if you have the battle of the top 2 seeds going at it for a rubber match, considering that Alcaraz beat Sinner in the French, Sinner beat Alcaraz at Wimbledon, and now you may have another epic bout or epic match with these 2 guys going at it to see who's going to win the final Grand Slam of the year. Nobody's going to watch. Or Djokovic going for history at 38 years of age. The old guard ready to pass the torch, or the old guard saying, I'm not ready to pass the torch just yet. They're going to be flies watching this here in America. But they have it at 2 o'clock. And it would still get swallowed up at 4:30 because you have Packers and Lions. But, hey, that's what they chose to do. Have at it. But how I look at this here, does Osaka get to a final? Anisimova listen, she's playing well. Osaka could be in for a tough go here. I'd like to see Osaka win just for her to complete this comeback, but I think she's going to fall short. And Sabalenka, Pegula, this would be a huge step for Pegula to get to a final, to beat the number 1 women's player in the world. But I think Sabalenka will get there. And if it's Sabalenka and Anisimova, and remember, this could be payback now because Anisimova beat Sabalenka at Wimbledon in the semifinal in order for her to face Swiatek. So keep that in mind. So I could almost see what Anisimova did to Swiatek, watch Sabalenka do to Anisimova if it somehow, some way happens to be that way. And I have to say it, even if Alcaraz does advance to face Sinner in a final, I'm going to root like hell for Alcaraz big time, and I think he could beat him. But Sinner just has so much gas in the tank. And this is coming from Alcaraz not losing a set here at Flushing Meadows so far over the last week and a half. Could Alcaraz win? Absolutely. But Sinner's, and on this surface too, and remember, Alcaraz won his first ever tournament, Grand Slam that is, on this surface at this venue. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that Alcaraz is going to be a big underdog come Sunday if they do meet up. But I'll root like hell, and I picked Alcaraz to win the whole thing, so I'm going to root like hell for him. But Sinner, this could be his tournament to lose, so you know I'll be on top of that when we get to Monday's podcast. All right, now let me wrap it up here as I put on my high tops and get to the association, because you have a developing story that was unfolded yesterday by Pablo Torre, the podcaster. Pablo Torre Finds Out. And he's a guy that likes to uncover these type of things, and congratulations and kudos to him. Because what he has found here, I guess over his research, whether it be over the last few weeks or certainly over these last few days, how he's come out to find that the owner of the Clippers, Steve Ballmer, has found a loophole in order to pay one of his players, Kawhi Leonard, who he signed an extension to prior to last year. I think it was 3 years, $153 million, whatever it was. But this document, or documents, I should say, that he had found, where Kawhi Leonard was employed, or certainly has an LLC called KL2, I think it's called KL2 Properties or KL2, forgot exactly what it was, but he was paid $28 million to make an appearance for this company called, and let me see if I can pull this up here real quick. This environmental company called Aspiration. And for him to just make an appearance to earn $28 million, which records show that there was no such event, there was no such appearance. So Kawhi Leonard actually got $28 million of payment for a no-show to a now bankrupt environmental company. I believe it's environmental. Or I don't think it's tech. And we know Ballmer made his money in tech with Microsoft, I believe. So now this has been uncovered. Of course, the Clippers have denied this, saying that this is false. It's provably false. No way, blah, blah, blah. Well, if that's the case, why haven't Ballmer and the Clippers come out vehemently after Pablo Torre to say this is slander, we're going to countersue these false claims that there's no way that Steve Ballmer was in any way, shape, or form involved in any circumventing of the salary cap, because that's what this is. Because let's just say the first year of this contract that's going to pay him 3 years, $153 million, let's say in the first year, $51 million, that 28 of it was going to go to this fee of his to show up at this event, to just maybe wave a hand or two, sign some autographs, take a few pictures, and that's it. Goodbye. Well, obviously the event never happened, never took place. I'm sure the money has been long deposited, but I smell a rat. Now, an investigation is ongoing. The NBA, I'm sure, looking into it. And right now, there's not been anyone from Ballmer's camp or even the Clippers that have vehemently denied this. Now, they have denied it to the point where, there's no provability from what they said, or they can't provably make that claim. Well, if that's the case, how come they're not going after Torre? At least not as of right now. Maybe in the coming days they will. But if there was storage, I'd be like, this hasn't happened. What are you, nuts? Who is this Pablo Torre? This is slander here. There's no way that this took place. We got to go after this guy. Haven't heard that in the last 48 hours. So now you have to think, where there's smoke, there's fire. And who knows if they're trying to throw cold water on this, or they're trying to now look at this loophole to look at the blueprint or the even fine print to see whether or not that they can get away with this. But if this comes to pass where Ballmer got his hand caught in the cookie jar, there's going to be some hefty penalties to pay, whether that means fines, where Ballmer's chump change for him, but who knows? Is it going to be in the 7-figure deal? $1 million fine, $5 million, will be $10 million fine, and maybe future draft picks that are in jeopardy? It's quite possible. Or maybe even suspension of Ballmer for a year? Who knows what they find? It all depends on what they uncover here over the course of the next, I guess, whatever, days, weeks, maybe months, until we find out. But if that's the case, Steve Ballmer, come on now. You got more money than God. And I understand. These guys that are billionaires, they always try to find loopholes. They always try to find tax breaks. They always try to find something in order for them to get away with. And here it is, Pablo Torre, who does very good work. And I don't know the guy from a hole in the wall, so it's not as if I got the Pablo Torre pom-poms out for him. But he had another story just recently, I think it was regarding the NFL. To lose me at the moment, but that came true. And there certainly was a lot of fire regarding the smoke that he brought to that story. And damn it, I should have been a little bit more prepared, so I got to raise my hand high in the air as far as that goes. But let's see where this goes and how Ballmer's going to handle this, because if he's caught dead red here, there's going to be severe price to pay. And what is Adam Silver going to do is even going to be more important, because Silver works for the owners. So as if he can't come down on them so hard. Now, I understand he did so. That was more, I think, David Stern in transition when Stern stepped down in 2014, the whole Donald Sterling thing with the racist comments, etc. But that's more of a layup than this. What does he tell Steve Ballmer if this is all true? Steve, I got to suspend you. Or Steve, I got to put the smackdown on you. I can't just give you a slap on the wrist, or here's a $500,000 fine, and all right, we're going to take your second-round draft pick next year. What? No. You can't do that. And I'm sure there may be other owners that are probably trying to, wait, have we done anything like this out there? So we'll see how this shakes down, but it's certainly a bad optic right now. And what this means for other owners, not only just in the NBA, but maybe even the NFL for that matter, if they're trying to do that, as far as pay their players, or if, and I understand it's more publicly owned with the Packers. They do have a hierarchy, but it's not as if there's one owner that owns the team. There's a bunch of shareholders, as you know. But yeah, could you imagine a team that's paying, let's say, Jerry Jones, Dak Prescott? Yeah, he had to make an appearance at some car dealership 6 months ago where he didn't, so I paid him $35 million of his $60 million salary, and oops, well, I didn't know that. And I'm just using Jerry as an example. That's not a story. So before it gets aggregated, if it does get aggregated, but before that comes out and be like, what, Jerry Jones did what? No, he did not. Just using Jerry as an example, unfortunately. But that's what Ballmer's facing right now. So we'll obviously keep an eye on that as we move it along to see what's going to happen there with Ballmer and the Clippers. And that'll do it, my good people. Another episode just about in the books, as always. Thank you so much for stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what happens in the toy department of life called sports. And if you haven't done so, people, please subscribe, rate, review my NFL preview on my YouTube channel, and exclusively there. So you're not going to get it on Apple, Spotify, or the website at JAYREELZ.com. You got to go to the YouTube channel at JAYREELZ specifically to watch and listen to my 2025 NFL preview. Full comprehensive breakdown. Not only of the top storylines, I break down the divisions, over-under win totals, my surprises, disappointments, my knockout pool pick for the week, as well as my Super Bowl prediction and a Pittsburgh Steelers preview, because that is my beloved team. You'll get all that there, 2 hours. So check it out. I would appreciate it. And if you haven't done so, subscribe, rate, all the good stuff, whether on Apple, Spotify, the website, JAYREELZ.com, YouTube channel at JAYREELZ. If you have a question, comment, suggestion, you can do so at the following: on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast, JAYREELZ just on Instagram, on Twitter, JAYREELZ1 just the number, and the old-fashioned way to JAYREELZpodcast at gmail.com. You know I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. It's in the blood, it's in the DNA, as I like to say, from birth. Passion, fire, energy, fury. As long as I'm sitting in front of this microphone and camera, I promise that's what I'll deliver to discuss anything and everything that's happening on the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond, peace, love, and God bless everybody. And happy early birthday to my brother Justin, who turns 48 tomorrow. That's why I got to shout you out, and we have to talk. It's been a minute, so holla at me, my man. I'll be in touch with you. But until next time, peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ podcast, on the flip, baby.